Hey folks, this is Kelani. We're on week 3 of the Battle for Azeroth pre-patch event, or I guess week 2 of the story, and we now have access to the rest of the War of the Thorns campaign. We talked a little bit last week about how it was a little disappointing how the first chapter just sort of stopped in the middle, without giving us much to do in the time between then and now. With the weekly reset came a few more quests. If you haven't done them yet, I would recommend going to get them done before watching the rest of this video, because that's what we're going to talk about, how this chapter resolved, what happened, and how we feel about the events that transpired. That's the only warning you're going to get. Go on, shoo. Go get the quests done and then come back. The chapter should be available for everyone at this point. So going into this pre-patch event, most of the overall story plot points had already been revealed. We've known for months now that Teldrassil would end up burning down. We just didn't know why, how, or what led up to the burning of a world tree. We also know that the Alliance move on to Lordaeron next to try and capture the Undercity. Again, we know the outcome, but unless you've played through the event on beta, you don't know the ins and outs of that battle. There's also 2 cinematics that have been hidden from us, one at the end of the Teldrassil quests and one at the end of the Battle for Lordaeron. We've now seen the cinematic which shows us exactly how the tree goes from a thriving night elf city to a smouldering column of smoke and ash. The other cinematic will be unveiled next week when we can play through the Battle for Lordaeron, and we'll finally get to see what exactly happens towards the end of that conflict. There was so much speculation surrounding these events. Who would burn the tree? Who benefited the most? Why was Sylvanas marching on Teldrassil in the first place? I was really excited to see if something strange or mysterious would happen. There were plenty of suspicious characters for a variety of reasons. Rathian could have made a return and burned down the tree while we were busy fighting each other to spark off a new war, because we sort of ruined his plans the last time. Jaina could have sent the tree ablaze to spark the war that she might feel she needs to redeem herself for siding with the Horde in the past. Greymane has also been itching to get at some Horde-ish throats. Setting the tree on fire to stop the Horde from occupying it wouldn't be the craziest idea in the world, but if he did it in secret, he could then push for the Alliance to march on Lordaeron, something that would align perfectly with his little plan of protecting Gilneas. There have been some crazier speculations. The Old God tricked a random Night Elf into it, the Old Gods were controlling Sylvanas and the Horde, Gallywix could have put the plans in motion so he can sell more Azerite-based weapons, it could have just been an accident while trying to weaponize Azerite. That would really show off both its potential for destruction, but also the risks it could hold. They could have even had the perpetrator completely anonymous at this point. As the Horde finally break their way through, as they're manning their ships and sailing towards the tree, it could start with just a flicker of flames, and slowly but surely ignite the entire world tree. From the Alliance side, they could have only just and so rallied their fleets. They can see Teldrassil on the horizon and just a hint of smoke as it starts to burn. If neither faction immediately knew what happened, that could have opened up a few interesting storylines in the expansion itself. Maybe we could uncover some terrible conspiracy from either side, and even a neutral faction, after we've all slaughtered each other, obviously, after going to war, but instead of all that, Sylvanas gives the order, demolishes unleash fireball after fireball towards the tree, and that's one more fallen world tree. It just seems so boring. There's no mystery there, there's no surprise. I'm pretty sure when we first found out about Teldrassil burning down, we were told it might not happen quite how we might expect. But that's exactly how it happened. Sylvanas marched on Teldrassil and she burnt it to the ground. I thought there was supposed to be some blurred lines here, but the only person who seems to question whether we're doing the right thing is Saurfang. Okay, so let's take a little step back. Why did Sylvanas march the Horde towards Teldrassil in the first place? The answer seems to be to secure Kalimdor and secure a future for the Horde. With Azerite being discovered in Silithus, and with this new material being incredibly potent in a lot of different ways, Sylvanas felt like she needed to make sure the Alliance wouldn't be able to get their hands on it. At this point, the Alliance is significantly more powerful than the Horde. After Mists of Pandaria, Varian could have dismantled the Horde entirely, yet he decided to let Vol'jin take charge and leave them be. The Horde has been divided quite a few times at this point, each time making them weaker and weaker. Sylvanas knows that if the Horde should fall, the Forsaken wouldn't be too far behind. If she wants to protect the Forsaken, she has to protect the Horde as a whole, especially now that she's War Chief. So take the Alliance's major stronghold on Kalimdor, and hopefully they won't have access to this wonderful new substance. They can't create weapons of mass destruction, and the Horde secures a military advantage. This entire operation was supposed to be a blitzkrieg. The Alliance weren't supposed to be able to rally or defend their lands, let alone fight back. That obviously didn't work. Sylvanas thought that if she killed off Malfurion, then the Night Elves and the Alliance would lose their fighting spirit. They would back down. That seems like a really weird plan in the first place. Let's kill the mate of the leader of the Night Elves. That'll break them for sure. They won't ever want to fight back again after that. or they'll fight even harder next time. Probably not her best battle plan to date, and that's ignoring the part where we don't even kill Malfurion. Saurfang lets him go. So when the Horde finally pushes towards Teldrassil, the Alliance has had enough time to rally their forces because they managed to keep them back for a significant amount of time. They'll be heading towards Teldrassil to try and take it back before the Horde even occupies it. The little conversation that Sylvanas has with the Night Elf in the cinematic basically boils down to the Alliance won't stop. He won't break their fighting spirit, they'll come back again and again until they retake Teldrassil. Malfurion isn't dead, so that plan's out the window, and when he returns he's probably going to cause a lot of problems for the Horde who are still defending the World Tree. While they still have a hope of retaking their lost home, the fighting won't end. The Horde probably couldn't hold Teldrassil in an extended skirmish or campaign, so Sylvanas decides to cut her losses and burn it down. That makes a lot of sense. If you can't hold a position but you still want to take it away from your enemy, destroy it. The Alliance won't have the harbour to ship Azeroth back to the Eastern Kingdoms, and Sylvanas doesn't have to worry about it being retaken. Burning it down is kind of a win-win for the Horde right now. Except, none of that reasoning comes across in what we've seen so far. Even the little snippets after the cinematic where she's explaining that this wasn't the plan are void of any explanation. The Horde was supposed to leave the Alliance broken and bleeding, not willing to raise their fists again. Obviously that doesn't work. We know what's in store next week, and it looks like Sylvanas knows too. All she says is prepare to be called upon again. We're not really given much to work with. Without reading too much into it, it kind of looks like Sylvanas just threw a tantrum because a dying Night Elf told her they still have hope. Even Nathanos seemed to hesitate for a brief moment before being screamed at again. It doesn't look or feel calculated. It looks like she's tipping the table because she lost her game of chess. Where we were supposed to get morally grey decisions in a war chief who was cold and calculated, it looks like we have another Garrosh on our hands. In a time where peace could have potentially been achieved, even with the events of Before the Storm, Sylvanas sends the Horde on a warpath once again. I wonder if she values the Horde at all at this point, or if she's fine just using them as a shield for herself and the Forsaken. The ends justify the means. We're probably going to see a lot worse as we progress through the Battle for Azeroth, but we could feasibly end up with another Siege of Orgrimmar where Sylvanas is the target this time instead of Garrosh. Which brings me to an interesting point. This war could create a chasm between two sides of the same faction, and that's not just in the game and in the lore. I've seen so many posts already from players on each side of this conflict. Horde players saying that they hate what Sylvanas is doing and where the story is going, and other Horde players essentially screaming for the Horde and death to the Alliance. I'm sure we'll see a few conflicts arising with in-game characters as well. Now, whether or not you care to roleplay or care about the story at all, this war could divide the Horde yet again, and each of those sides might have their own leader right now. Sylvanas on the warpath and Saurfang trying to maintain his honour. We're not sure if Sylvanas has a bigger picture painted in her head. I hope so at the moment because we're not really getting many threads to tie together here, but Saurfang is questioning parts of this war. He knows this is to secure a future for the Horde, but his ideals are making him question the methods being used. He strikes Malfurion from behind as Sylvanas seems to be struggling with their little duel, and he immediately regrets it. He struck without honour, and that's the reason why he doesn't finish Malfurion off. During the few quests we have on the Horde side, Saurfang actually tells you to not attack any civilians which don't resist. One of the Horde quests is to secure and rescue civilians. If Sylvanas was handing out those quests, I seriously doubt saving any lives would be on the to-do list. I am excited to see how these events will shape some of the future storylines in Battle for Azeroth and whether that chasm eventually divides the Horde as a whole. If nothing comes of it, I'll be extremely disappointed. The War of Thorns has been a little disappointing for me so far. Hopefully the cinematic we get at the end of the Battle for Lordaeron will make up for some of the shortcomings we've seen so far. I personally believe this whole string of events could have been a little more interesting, but maybe we're still missing a piece of the puzzle. Maybe we only have half of the picture. We're certainly missing a little bit of an explanation from Sylvanas about her thought processes, but if we end up removing her from her position of War Chief in the end, well, I guess someone better keep an eye on her during the trials so she doesn't escape to another alternate Draenor. It's just a little frustrating that I know Battle for Azeroth has some great content and I'm going to have a blast playing through it when it goes live, but the story leading up to the expansion seems like it's just an excuse to get the Horde and the Alliance back to fighting one another. What do you think of the War of the Thorns so far? Are you happy with how the story is unfolding? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. If you want to hop on that train, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.